Your exploration vessel has worked well with its new human crew members, since humans are eager to see all sorts of different worlds. However, when your ship comes across its first oceanic planet, the humans absolutely refuse to leave the ship. In the crew bay, the ship is shaking violently as it encounters the edges of the world's atmosphere. Strapped into his force chair, Yaren sits quietly and flips through the data. HFY 310 is an oceanic world. Deep scan indicates liquid oceans, and water vapor heavy atmosphere. There appears to be no land masses of any kind on the surface, nor any shallow reefs. The entire planet from pole to pole was single, deep ocean. Yaren felt the excitement bubbling up inside. Another new world, another series of discoveries to make. He looked up. All along the opposite crew bay wall sat 6 humans. Each was an able explorer and brilliant scientist. Besides himself and the pilot, who were both Nixian, all of his crew was humans. In the 38th century, this was little surprise. Where other spacefaring species were often insular to a fault, humans were more willing, or desperate, to secure a ride into new frontiers with unlikely companions. More importantly, however, where almost all species in the law-abiding federations of the galaxy were timid and careful, humans were reckless. It was seldom you could convince an Artusian or a Ralduran or any of the other advanced species to embark on an endeavor that risked failure. If that venture also risked personal harm, you could forget it entirely. It was for that reason that when Yaren looked up and saw the terrified faces of his human crew flipping desperately through the readouts on their personal tablets, he was surprised. The vessel shook violently, and the sounds of sloshing water could be heard as the vessel's engines cooled it idle. "Time to get going," Yaren said, unbuckling himself and rushing to be the first out onto the observation deck that ran along the ship's spinal. The crew called out after him, telling him to wait, imploring him to wait, to slow down. He continued anyways, climbing upward out of the access hatch. He was the captain, he told himself. He couldn't allow himself to be slowed down or show fear. As he emerged out into the weak sunlight, he saw the world with his own eyes. Below was the bulk of the ship, bobbing slowly as it came to rest in the black water below. He peered down at the water, and though it was still and clear, he found in the dire light he could see little besides darkness below. The humans were climbing out behind him now, and if anything he could sense their unease grow. Asterisk. "No waves," one muttered, and the fog. He turned excitedly and gestured around. "There's no orbital bodies to induce tide and no wind to form waves. Isn't it beautiful? Serene, yes? That is the word?" The humans looked around awkwardly. The fog was closer now than it had seemed on landing, and it was difficult to see more than 20 yards in any direction. They were a dot, floating in the mist on a dark, deep ocean as smooth as glass. Darren, the chief scientist of the humans, turned to Yaren. "I think the correct term is creepy, sir." Yaren wasn't listening anymore, busy instead talking hurriedly into his communicator with the pilot. After a few minutes of conversation in Nixian, Yaren began taking off his pressure suit. The humans stared in shocked perplexity. Darren tried to object, but managed only to splutter. Yaren waved him down as he awkwardly hopped to remove his left boot. "It's fine, Darren. The bridge confirms the water is non-toxic and the atmosphere breathable. I thought you humans came from a world with oceans. Don't you want to as well?" Darren looked even more perplexed. "Want to what, sir?" "Swim!" Yaren beamed. "You can't be serious." "I know how to swim," Yaren responded, mock sarcasm in his voice. "I just don't think that's a good idea, sir." Yaren smiled inwardly. It was a rare treat to upstage the human's usual blustering bravado. He took 2 running steps and threw himself of the edge. The drop was 3 meters, and the water splashed noisily as he landed. From above, the humans watched in frank dismay as the Nixians splashed and caroused and yelled taunts and jibes up at them. The ripples in the water seemed unusually stark as they reflected against the fog above. They seemed to crisscross and clash, forming complex patterns of gray fog and dark water. There seemed to Darren to be more ripples than could be created by one man. From below a sound began, choral and atonal. It was soft at first, then swelling to a crescendo, before fading again. It reminded Darren of whale song. I reminded Yaren of his vulnerability. As the sound repeated, growing louder in its crescendos, the humans began to yell and plead at Yaren to hurry up, to return to the ship. Yaren needed no encouragement. He was thrashing violently in the water, trying desperately to claw his way back to Void Ship. Darren locked eyes with him, screaming at him to hurry up. Darren saw the look of terror seize Yaren as something grasped him from below and pulled him into the depths. The tonal chanting stopped then, and from somewhere very far away in the fog, there was the sound of other choirs singing.